Howdy folks, and welcome back. The reception from the last video was incredibly kind, and I truly can't thank you all enough for those of you who commented, liked, and subscribed. But you're not here for the whole mushy-gushy stuff. Today, we are going to be talking about creature design. Now, before we begin, there are three broad topics in design that I'll be going over in future videos because I want to give each design sphere its own dedicated, video. But as a good preface, the three designs are creature design, card design, and utility design. Creature design is what it says on the tin. What's the art for the actual creature, humans, whatever it is your game has, the basic art of the card. Card design deals with the actual layout of the playing card. This is just as, if not more important than the creature design. And finally, we have utility design. Something I see a lot of is a heavy focus on creature design and card design, but a game's incomplete without the support cards. Their artwork and style, in my opinion, are just as important as they can basically bring the whole game together. But we'll get into that later. Today, we are going to solely focus on creature design. So first things first, and I truly wish I had been told this when I was a lot younger, you don't need to be a professional artist to make a good card game. Yes, there are people out there who will make better art than you. That's okay. Could it be a contributing factor as to why others may not want to purchase and play your game because of the art? This is a possibility, but this is also totally okay. What's important is that the audience that actually wants to play your game sees the effort that you are putting into it. Take my work, for example, from Gates. The Caged was one of the first designs I ever made, and it's something else. I truly could not tell you what it was I made. There's no shading in the eyes. There should be shading around the bars to show a shadow, and the line work is, it's atrocious. This is all okay. There are ways around this bad, fine motor skills that I have, from smoothing to taking things really slowly. What I'm trying to get at is, if you are hell-bent on drawing your own card, do it. I'll admit, I always hated this advice. It always felt preachy, especially coming from people whose art could belong in a museum, but it's true. Just keep practicing. Pick up your pencil and just go for it. I'm not saying my art has gotten really any better, but what I can say is I have much more pride in the work that I have created now. Let's look at the first design for Aquology. You can clearly tell I still drew it. The, let's call it stylistic choice and not lack of skill, is still there. Some of the lines aren't straight, and they probably could be, and I could try to work a bit more on shading. But if I'm honest with you, I'm incredibly proud of what I created. While it may not look like there's been a huge improvement, I can tell you, from at least my position, this is leagues better than what the Caged was. I knew what I wanted this creature to look like, and everyone can easily tell this is an aquatic creature. For that, I'm incredibly proud of myself. Now, let's say you truly don't want to draw your art. That's perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. There are several artists that would be willing to work with you for a price, of course. You can find them anywhere on freelance sites such as Fiverr, or even Reddit, I'm aware, has some subreddits dedicated to finding artists. All I would ask is that you not use AI for the final product. Now, I'll get into what I mean by that. This is an argument that has been beat into the ground, and I could talk about how it trains off real artist work, the environmental effects generation has, or even the fact that due to it being AI generated, you don't have a legal trademark or copyright to the design. Instead, what I would argue is it's soulless, and it looks more like you're trying to create a quick cash grab than actually trying to create a game and build a community around it. Here's an example. On the right is a sketch of a design from Aquology. It's pretty rough. There's no color. It'll take me time to think about what I want the end result to look like, and it's not there yet. Now, on the left is a fully completed AI-generated image with me putting in the exact descriptors of this sketch. It's cool, guys. I won't lie. It's pretty close to what I was trying to get at, but it has no artistic value when it comes to how it's looking. There's no human component to its creation. It just exists. It's soulless. And while I bash Pokemon for making an ice cream creature, there was still some level of design and human thought that went into it. Here, there isn't any of that. You can clearly tell it was AI generated, and overall, while cool, I believe, and I think I've seen many others agree with this, it'll ultimately hinder the overall artistic theme and value of the game. Now, I don't want to bash the entire concept of AI. I will say, though, that if you use AI, use it as a placeholder. I have no issue with AI being used as an artistic placeholder, so when you play test, you have something to look at rather than just a blank card like what I did for Gates. Actually, it makes it a lot better if you have something to look at. Otherwise, it's a little weird when you're playtesting. Okay, my apologies. I will get off my soapbox and continue. All right, so you've got your theme for the game. You have your design guardrails in place. You've chosen whether to outsource the art or do it yourself. How do you actually make a design? Well, honestly, like most things creative, it's a highly personal process, but there are still pointers I can hope I help with. My biggest takeaway from designing Gates was craft the art to the card, not the other way around. What I'm arguing is creating the art first, then make the name for the card. Otherwise, you may pigeonhole yourself, and I'll give you a good example. In Gates, I created a card called Tooper before I actually made the artwork. This may also be a Gates-centric problem because of the broad theme I chose, but I now had to come up with an idea for what Tooper meant. Ultimately, I came up with this. Is it good? Sure. Is it what Tooper is? I don't know, maybe. Let's take another look at the stingray I sketched. The design is based off of the anatomy of an eagle ray, albeit now has its mutations, specifically the lack of eyes, toothed mouth, and 3 tails, as well as the actual body markings. It does not have a name yet, but it could range from names from mouthed eagle ray to Stevens ray, based off like the fake scientist who mutated it, to tri-pronged murder ray. My point is, I stuck to my design guardrails of mutations while still allowing some level of creative leeway when it came to the creature's design, and especially when we hit card design, what it's going to be called. Designs can also be based off of what the creature actually does, i.e., you have an effect in mind and you form a creature around that. Here's a good example. I want to create a status effect known as decay. So I'm going to create a creature that in some form will show decay. Now, decay can be multiple different things. This is one such sketch. You can clearly see that I was going for parts of the body are missing, and you can see the internals. This is just another way that you can design a creature. But, I hear you say, this doesn't feel very personal to Aquology. How do I specifically make a design? I, personally, have 2 main ways. One is more research focused, the other is not. Let's start with the latter. I have a bad habit of doodling. Always have, always will. You should see my old college notes. The margins are just covered in random drawings, and I even take a sketchbook to work, so when I have some downtime, I'll doodle a little. When I doodle, I don't have a design in mind. All I'm really doing is drawing a bunch of shapes until my brain sort of snaps awake and sees something I can work with. It truly is a brain-off moment. This leads to one of 3 outcomes. There's either nothing there, and so be it. Failure is absolutely okay. Second, there's an outline of a fish or something that I can very clearly use. Or 3, there's an outline of something I have, but it's not remotely looking like a fish. In which case, it gets added to what I will call the experiment list. I don't want to necessarily throw out the design because I like it, but it also can't be considered a mutated fish. When messing with mutagens, you never fully know what might happen. In that case, it'll simply be considered experiment followed by a number. Take this cute little guy. Couldn't tell you what, if anything, it's based off of, but it's adorable and I love it. So now it's an experiment. Again, it's still clearly an aquatic creature, it's just not really based off of anything. What I'm trying to impart upon you is that when designing something, don't think you need to have a whole formed, completed idea in your head. Truly just let yourself doodle and see what you come up with. Now, I recognize this may not work for everyone. Some people really do need a concrete plan in their head that they can kind of move forward with. And honestly, that's fine as well. Nothing wrong with that. The second main way I designed for Aquology is research. I look up fish and sharks and ray anatomy, what their body builds are, what sort of fins they may have, and go from there. I'll also use an absolutely fantastic website called Fishbase. This is a massive online encyclopedia of all known fish. Then it's as simple as finding one, taking a base body, and then mixing and matching different parts till I get some level of a base sketch that I like. I then will go in and refine how the body should look like, the fins, tail, etc. Afterwards, then it comes down to the mutations. What about this creature should be mutated? It could be truly as mundane as a color palette change to extra teeth, eyes, tentacles, or whatever else my mind can come up with. At that point, I have about 90% of the way done with the sketch, and then it's time for digitization, where I add colors and patterns. With that, please keep in mind that what I've just sort of spoken about is specifically how I make Aquology creatures. If you are basing your game on humanoid figures, eldritch horrors, or whatever it might be, it would behoove you to do just a little bit of research into the makeup of that thing you are drawing. Can't believe I'm about to say this, but don't let perfection be the enemy of good. It took me years to understand that through school, Twitch streaming, and gates, for me to finally actually understand kind of the underlying everything of what that statement is. And honestly, I'm still trying to fight the feeling of just one more tweak. When it gets down to it, how do you, as an artist, know if a design is done and ready? Well, honestly, it's your call. But if you're constantly changing small things about the piece, let it go. It's done. Move on to the next design. If a design isn't coming out the way you want it to, move on. It's okay. There is nothing wrong with realizing it's just not coming out the way you want and spending all your energy on trying to fix it. If you really have to, come back to it later if you must, but moving to the next design is essential to completing your game. Now, I hope this video made sense and helped you narrow down and start designing your creature. I recognize this video was a little bit more all over the place. It simply is because it is more dealing with creative aspect than anything specific. When it comes to art, it's very subjective. It's hard to give super amazing concrete advice, unlike in card design, where there is very much wrong and right things you probably want to look for. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. You may not agree with a word I said. Totally fine. You may take some of it, leave others. That's totally fine as well. My hope is that these videos at least help spark something so that you yourself are able to begin down the road of creation. In the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed and have a great rest of your day. Peace.